Yeah, I think it's pretty telling that if you watched the DNC, I think you're doing live commentary on that, right? So
Yeah.
you probably
Oh,
sat through.
unfortunately, I did indeed have to watch that. Boy.
Yeah. So you probably sat through quite a bit of the DNC, uh, and um, and one thing that was like really striking. Look, I know all political conventions are vacuous, right? Like that's
Right.
like very rarely that you're going to deviate from that, right? I mean, I guess like every now and again you get the Williams, Jennings Bryan talking about the cross of gold or whatever, but
Yeah.
but like that's pretty rare, right? It's especially modern conventions.
Yes.
And there are some exacerbating things that were going on with this particular convention, that because it was just being held under bizarre circumstances that like I mean, it was the political equivalent of watching a baseball game where they have cardboard fans in the stands,
Yeah.
and
Just
like
that
fake.
wall of clapping people at the end of the speeches, just insanely dystopian. Logan's Run universe there. Just they should have all been wearing like weird future togas or something.
Yeah, exactly, right. And of course, like especially like even like the roll call vote, which is normally like sort of charming in a goofy way, and parts of it were this time, but like some of those images from there were I
It
mean
was like
I
a
think
parade of it was like a parade of ISIS beheading videos. A bunch of people in masks grimly standing in a line.
yeah. But even so, even kind of grading on a curve for that, right? Okay, so some of this was just like media incompetence, like literally to the point where there was all this like dead air, or like you could hear people talking in the background, like somehow the Democratic Party can't get it together to like get some people who know how to use Zoom and have some media skills. I don't really understand what's going on there. And some of it's just the fact that you're doing it under a plague where like nobody's really figured out how to do this yet, so it hasn't happened yet. But there's also this much more general cringiness there that I think says something less about the circumstances right now, and more about the Democratic Party, joined now by Megan Day, who is one of my favorite Jacobin writers, and who I wanted to loop into this specifically on this question, right? The sort of extreme, bizarre cringiness of the Democratic Convention and what that might say, not just about, okay, they're doing it during a plague and like they haven't figured out yet that like having a wall of Zoom clapping is incredibly creepy, but also might say something about the Democrats.
Yeah. Hey, Ben. Hey, Matt.
Hey.
I think that obviously, like Ben said, some of it actually just has to do with the awkwardness of having a Zoom convention, and it's kind of awkward anyway, but made extra so by the fact that they're trying to put on this sort of like sparkly political product in a very bizarre format. So, well, leaving that aside, giving them the benefit of the doubt, I actually think that it's I've been thinking since the convention that it might be useful to try to like develop a more structural analysis of why the DNC was so cringe and why the Democratic Party's political productions and spectacles are so cringe in general. This is the word that you keep seeing coming up over and over again. And my hunch is that actually what you're seeing is that the Democratic Party has to be increasingly vacuous in order to conceal the fact that because it's a cross-class coalition, it actually has two diametrically opposed political programs inside of it. Now, for a long time, one of those programs was just concealed by the fact that the working class, the organized working class, and the progressive and socialist left were just so disempowered that there was no, sort of swept under the rug, right? But as the left starts to become more organized and more visible, the contradictions within the Democratic Party become more obvious. I mean, this is a party that essentially asks Blue Cross Blue Shield executives to exist in the same sort of party structure as people who are literally getting their medical claims denied by Blue Cross Blue Shield. So it's, you see like the Republicans are putting forward this incredibly divisive vision. The Democrats are putting forward this like vision of false harmony, where they're asking, Blackstone executives to exist in the same party as people who are getting evicted and having their locks glued by Blackstone. I mean, this is there, like I said, there's a sort of like a genuine class conflict within the party. Now, obviously, we know how that conflict gets resolved. It gets resolved in favor of the dominant class behind closed doors, right? But as the left starts to develop more visibility and more power, and I'm not going to overstate that, but more than before, you start to see that the Democratic Party has to get more and more vacuous in order to actually not touch any third rail, not touch anything substantive that would reveal the contradictions. They're trying to downplay the contradictions, right? But their ideal situation would be to downplay the contradictions and be quiet. I mean, that's sort of literally Joe Biden's strategy, right? But they can't actually, his strategy,
be on TV enough to reassure people that he's still running for president and he hasn't died, right? Like I keep expecting that by October, he's just going to go out to wave at the window for 30 seconds a day. And like, that'll be the ritual, that he won't be on TV anymore at all.
If the Democratic Party top brass, the establishment had their way, that's literally how they would interface with politics in general, because it's a lot easier than trying to do a song and dance and produce an appealing political product while not touching that third rail or not touching anything substantive that exposes the fact that there is actually an incredible class contradiction at the heart of the Democratic Party. And of course, the Republicans too, they also have a working class base and a ruling class leadership, but they're sort of united in kind of like death cult, death drive. They like, you guys talked about it. There's other stuff going on over there that doesn't put the
they're I mean, like, they can at least give people red meat, right? That like
right.
that like what the Republicans say they'll do for working class supporters and like these kind of small proprietors who are off in their base, right, is that they're going to that they're going to reassert something culturally, which is a little vague, and that can be kind of thin soup. But like now if they're shifting to like they're gonna like track down all the pedophile cannibals and have them killed, like at least that's exciting, right? Whereas it's hard to see what's exciting that's being offered, right? Like I saw, like in Kamala Harris's acceptance speech, like the one thing that stood out for me is there's no vaccine for racism, which I guess has the virtue of being true, but like it's kind of conspicuous that she's not telling us what we should be doing about racial injustice, right? We don't have the magical racism vaccine, but now we should do what?
Right, precisely. So there's like a typical baseline Democratic Party vacuity that when it needs to rise to the level of entertaining people or impressing upon people that it exists and it's real and it has some kind of identity, some kind of brand identity, they kind of go over the top with it and they end up being sort of like theatrical and mawkish. They go really purple with it. They make these sort of like overwrought emotional appeals that to us, I think a lot of us feel, oh my God, Marianne Williamson, actually, she knocked it out of the park. What did she say? She said that watching the DNC was like binge watching a Marriott commercial.
Yeah.
Bless her. This is what I mean. Yeah. That's why it's like that, though. The reason it's like that is not just because the people who are in charge of it have bad taste. I think that that's maybe the impulse that people have, where they're like, oh, I hate these people. They have bad politics and they also have bad taste. No, it's actually much deeper than that. It's that we have a party that, unlike the Republican Party, actually theoretically purports to stand for something-ish related to working people's interests-ish, and yet actually can't go too far in articulating that without biting the hand that feeds it, and so needs to like backpedal away from that while also putting on a spectacle, and can't really throw red meat the same way that the same way that the Republican Party can, because they don't want to seem unhinged, right? So instead of seeming unhinged, they just seem really cringeworthy. So this is my theory about why it's so hard to watch them in action.
Yeah, no, I like it.